Hey everybody, welcome to Pop Culture Philosophers. It's time for Comics Revisited. Today we're revisiting What If number 3. What if the Avengers had never been? That's right, everybody. Thanks for checking out the channel. I am Rockin' Robbie Billups. This is Brooks the Magnificent. Today we're going to be revisiting here on Comics Revisited What If number 3. Now last season we did What If number 1, What If number 2. Today we do What If number 3. What if the Avengers...
Makes sense, because 3 comes after 2.
It does make sense. What if number 3, what if the Avengers had never been? Now of course, the Avengers are huge right now. They're movie stars, right? So that's a nice question to get. Now, we just recently got the news that What If's going to be an MCU Disney Plus animated series with Jeffrey Wright playing Uatu and doing a bunch of different what ifs kind of related to the MCU. How excited are you?
Twilight Zone.
Yeah, how excited are you for
that? That sounds really good. I hope they are they going to do different animation style types, or is it going to be like the same?
Oh, I doubt it. I bet it's going to be the same animation style. Yeah. I'm sure. But who knows? But I'm sure of it.
Yeah.
Like,
it'd be kind of cool if they try different styles for different stories.
It would be cool, actually.
But
yeah.
Whatever's fine as long as the storytelling is there.
Now, one of those stories that they should totally adapt is What If the Avengers Had Never Been? This was such a treat. Now, What If number 1 was decent, it was alright. Issue number 2 was good. What If the Hulk had Banner's brain? This one is the first time it gets really dark. Really dark, right? So, What If the Avengers Had Never Been? This came out in 1976. It was written by Jim Shooter, and it was illustrated by Gil Kane. Now, Jim Shooter, we know, became the editor-in-chief of Marvel. He did Secret Wars. Big guy. Big important guy in comic books, especially back in the 80s. There's your phone again. Back in the 80s, right? So, Jim Shooter wrote this, and this is, he was still kind of making his way up. Gil Kane was the artist. Gil Kane's the co-creator of Hal Jordan Green Lantern, of Ray Palmer's Atom, right? He drew the death of Gwen Stacy. He drew the cover of Amazing Spider-Man 129, which was the first appearance of the Punisher. He drew that cover, right? And he also co-created the Iron Fist. So, Gil Kane is a big deal in the comic book industry. So this is a nice treat that he did the artwork. Like I said, it came out in 1976, and it's a retelling of Avengers number 3, basically. Because in issue 2 of the Avengers, the Hulk quits. In issue 3, Iron Man and the rest of the Avengers, they go after Hulk. He's made a deal with Submariner. They fight to a standstill. The Avengers survive. They find Captain America in the very next issue. Right? What did you think overall about the comic book?
I liked it. It was, it was a good... It seems kind of like, a very simple idea. Like, what if there were... the Avengers hadn't been... The thing is, like, when does that happen? Because, the Avengers did assemble. Like, they did fight Loki. But, like, it picks up, like, after that first one, when the Hulk's finally, like, gets fed up with being treated like a dick by everybody.
Well, yeah, and also in issue number 2 of the Avengers, the Phantom Stranger was pretending to be the Hulk, and he turned the Avengers against the Hulk again. They kind of went after him, and he left the group. And then they went after him, and they fought Namor and
the Space Phantom, was it?
The Space Phantom, yeah. Did I say the Phantom Stranger?
Yeah, you said...
Yeah, I meant the Space Phantom, not the Phantom Stranger. Different, anyway. Yeah, so the basic idea of the story is that it takes off from after the moment that Hulk leaves. Instead of the Avengers banding together, they get in an argument about it. Thor straight up just leaves.
Yeah, Thor's like, whatever.
Thor's like, I don't...
classic Thor was like that, though. He was kind of a dick.
He was.
He was kind of like he kind of looked down on people.
All it took was one little argument in the very beginning of the Avengers, and Thor quits. And because Thor quits, then Giant Man goes, me and Janet, we're not enough for this. We're not going to do anything. So they quit. Now it's all just Iron Man, right? So Iron Man gets Rick Jones to help him track down the Hulk. And he gets Rick Jones to help him go after the Hulk. But that doesn't end so well. But they do survive, barely, right? Because just like in the comic book, Rick Jones goes first. They do get Rick Jones's help in the comic book.
Yeah. Rick Jones was kind of a... He was like
Hulk's sidekick.
Yeah, he was like a...
And he helped formulate the Avengers.
He started the Teen Brigade.
Yeah.
The ham radio enthusiasts.
Tony then builds... He comes up with a brilliant idea. He builds these new armors. One for Janet, one for Giant Man, and one for Rick Jones, right? And he gets them to try on the armor. but they can't quite figure out how to work it on it fast enough. Tony hasn't slipped, and remember, back in these days, nobody knew that Tony and Iron Man were the same person.
Yeah.
I love when he messes up.
He still had to like, that I worked on with Stark,
with
of course.
Tony Stark, my boss, of which I am the bodyguard.
My employer, Tony Stark.
Yes, but they can't cut it, so Tony decides he's just going to go alone. Right? So he like supercharges his armor beyond safety capacities, but he's got a reserve of power to keep his heart going because he's still in this moment where he's keeping the shrapnel from getting into his heart. Right? So he's super powered up and he goes after the Hulk. Now, when he does it, the rest of the Avengers start thinking, or Hank and Janet, they start getting together and they're like, you know what? He's going to go anyway and he's probably going to die. So he's there, but he actually kind of handles the Hulk. He's like supered out power. He's fighting him. He's getting it, right? Until he meets Namor.
Yeah,
what happens when he hits Namor?
When you got Namor and the Hulk together, like Iron Man can't handle that.
Namor uppercuts his ass straight up from the bottom of the bay over the ocean, and from that moment on, Tony Stark is out of the conversation. And Namor even says he's dead. And I was reading it, and I'm like, he's just dead? He's just dead? He's just dead? But he's not quite dead yet.
Yeah.
Janet, Wasp, Hank, Giant Man, and Rick Jones.
in Iron Man armor.
Yeah, they wind up picking up their own Iron Man armor again. And it's a nice little... the Iron Man Armored Avengers, that's the first appearance of the Armored Avengers, and it's a concept that would live on. Yeah. It's been done multiple times, especially in Earth X, after the Avengers have died, and Tony...
Never read Earth X.
Oh, dude. It's part of the PCP poll, which is... on PCP Army right now over at Facebook, the PCP poll for audience choice of this year, right? Earth X is on there. Earth X, Squadron Supreme, Batman Nightfall, White Out by Greg Rucka, Torso by Brian Michael Bendis, and Superman for All Seasons. Those are the picks. Right now, as we're recording this, it's neck and neck between Squadron Supreme, the original one from the 80s, and Superman for All Seasons. But if you want to vote for Earth X, get in there. Anyway, it's an idea that's been replicated many times. So that's cool. So they do manage to realize that Tony's going to get his ass kicked. So they go get this armor. They go to come save the day. Tony is laid out, but he's not quite dead yet. They're fighting. Everything's kind of going okay. They got different powers, which I think is neat. Like Rick's armor has the power to go intangible.
And Giant Man and Wasp, they work with their powers so that hers shrinks. And
well, what's interesting is I don't think that her armor shrinks, because if you look at it when she first sees it, Tony built her armor like this big. Like if you look at the issue, like she's holding it up and like she's already tiny. He just made like a tiny armor. And he also made like these things in like 40 hours, they say, with no sleep. Tony Stark is a genius, you know, even in the early days. And of course, 76 not quite the earliest of days. Anyway, so Hulk almost kills Giant Man because he like knocks out all the power in his suit and he can't breathe. Right?
Yeah, so like Namor almost kills Rick Jones.
Yeah, Namor almost kills Rick Jones. That distracts Hulk. So, but before that, Hank can't breathe. Tony gives the last of his power, the only thing keeping his heart alive, gives it to Hank. He gets supercharged, fends him off a little bit. Rick Jones is almost killed by Namor. Hulk realizes it. That's Rick Jones is Hulk's homie. Do you know what I'm saying? Hashtag Hulk's homie.
He was like the first person the Hulk met, really.
Yes, and the first like kind person. You know. So he goes after Namor. They wind up in the undersea battle that comes to a stalemate. Right. Yeah. Meanwhile, the armored Avengers look at Tony Stark as he dies. So I think we've read 2 so far. This is the first one where someone dies. It gets really tragic, really dark. Now this is a theme and a motif and an idea that's going to continue to live on throughout What If Comics. All in all, do you like the story? Do you like how it wound up? What do you think about that dark ending?
I think this is probably my favorite one so far.
Really? Why?
Yeah.
Because he dies?
Well, it's just like, it seems like it's an idea that, like, at first I didn't think was very interesting. Yeah. But then when I read the story, I'm like, that actually is a pretty interesting idea.
And it's just slight changes that lead to this.
And it would be like a big deal, like, in the rest of the universe. Like, the rest of the Marvel universe would be completely different without Iron Man.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. You go in further. Like, you could go back to that world. And if you do care to know, this is officially designated as Earth 776 in the Marvel multiverse. Okay? So, Earth 776. We could get back to this Earth. What happens to it 20 years later without Tony Stark there? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, what things would go different? You know, Galactus stuff would play out the same. But a lot of stuff in the Avengers books would play out differently. Maybe Kang would get the upper hand. You know what I'm saying? Maybe Ultron would get the upper hand. Like, without the
Would
genius.
they even still be an Ultron?
Yeah, because in
he's a Hank Pym creation.
Hank Pym,
I mean,
homie.
Yeah, I know, but I mean, like, I wasn't sure, like, if they
Well, I
had
think
collaboration on that early on.
Well, I don't know how much of it was. I think it's mostly Hank Pym. Tony Stark gets in the comic.
I know he
book,
was like mainly Hank's creation.
Yes, now in the movies, I know they kind of get it twisted and they have it being Tony and all that. But like just saying like Tony's contribution to the success of things like the Kree Skrull War. If Tony's not there, the Kree Skrull War is still going to happen. And he's not there with his brilliance. You know what I'm saying? To help formulate these plans. Anyway, what do you think about the artwork in the book?
I thought it was nice because it does very much seem like one of those older comic books. Like it seems like it would fit back in the Lee Kirby days.
Yeah, you know, Gil Kane was originally from Latvia. Came in. He was born in like 1926. He was doing Marvel, Atlas at the time and stuff. DC. He's done everything, right? He worked on Thunder Agents. He worked on Green Lantern. He helped create Hal Jordan. Ray Palmer, we already talked about that. He drew the death of Gwen Stacy. That's like 20 years later. So, like, he had a very long and esteemed career. Of course, we lost him a little bit ago. Gil Kane was absolute master at what he did. And I love that it does look old school. It feels old school, right? And it's nice because they're throwing back to old school comics. Now, this is 1976. The Marvel Universe, as we know and love it,
there's even a little caption in one panel where it's like,
this
like
last
one of those,
time.
you know, one of those arrows that sometimes points with text in. It's like, this will be the last time you see Iron Man in his classic gold armor.
Yeah, was Avengers #2. Remember that. And that's one of the fun things about What If was knowing the history. You know, some cats that read this for the first time never read Avengers #2. They didn't know, but through reading this book, as we talked about before, they learned what happened in these comics. So I love that they get a classic artist. But when you look at it, it's got simple breakdowns, right? Yeah. Nice flow of story. I love the space between the gutters. It really allows free movement. But there are moments when they close in, especially in on like Hulk's face a couple times. You get all the emotion, all the detail. Gil Kane was an absolute master. Don't you agree? Yeah. You know, and Jim Shooter, he's got his style in there. He's making it dark. He's doing some twisty stuff. He has some really sexist comments directed towards Janet.
Yeah, but I mean that is how he talked to her back then.
Unfortunately,
that was more Stan Lee's fault than his, really.
Yeah, I guess so, right? Jim Shooter's just kind of going along with what he is, but he does his typical thing. It's decent dialogue. It's good narration. It's Roy Thomas did the last two. Jim Shooter fills right in there, and it works. I think it's fine. And then you get all the Janet stuff. What do you think about some of the themes? Number one, don't go it alone. Because Tony, he's driven by this passion in this book, and what this book does so well. And I was reading this, right, and I was thinking, man, they totally nailed Tony Stark in the MCU because this has been how Tony always has been.
Endgame again, and
it's that obsessiveness.
It did kind of like, you know, I kind of thought about it. I'm like, wow, that's kind of like, you know, what happened to him in Endgame, sort of. Yeah, it's really like, and just the idea of how far Tony would go to solve a problem that he sees ahead. So don't go it alone. But also, for the other Avengers, Hank and Janet and Rick, believe your friends sometimes. When your friends say they need help, sometimes they legitimately need help. And if you ain't there in time, you know what I'm saying? Like, this, I mean, I'm not trying to be just funny. I'm trying to be a little bit real with this, too. But, like, for real, listen to your friends. Because when your friends cry out for help, like, they need your help. Yeah. So Tony shouldn't have gone it alone. Yeah. But he did ask for help. Yeah. But he also, like, this is about, like, the way he really, though, he didn't have much of a connection with these people at this point, you know? They'd had the one adventure together. Like, he may have sort of known about Hank Pym. Yeah. But, I mean, he doesn't know anything about Thor. Well, Thor doesn't know any of them.
And he thinks that they can just start working this suit.
It's like, the fact that the Avengers actually stayed together is actually kind of miraculous when you think about it. It's like, what reason would they really have, you know?
Yeah, it was very shaky ground until issue number 5 when Captain America.
Cap kind of, like, you know, unified the thing.
Yeah,
like,
sure did. So the importance of Cap, and of course, we'll get to that in a later What If, right? A lot of Captain America-centric ones. I really enjoyed reading this one. What do you think those themes are? What's there? Is there something else?
Yeah, it's like, you know, the Avengers are like such a great team because, you know, they're a family, you know. They're always looking out for each other, you know.
Paid family.
And it's like, all the years, all the different people who've been in Avengers, the whole thing is like, once an Avenger, always an Avenger.
Yeah.
So, like, anyone who's ever been an Avenger, like, if they get into deep trouble, like, all they gotta do is call, and they can have the Avengers, on their back. And if without that, like, things would be a lot different. Because, the Fantastic Four weren't so much a superhero group as they were kind of like superpowered explorers.
Yeah.
Which early on they were kind of, but they kind of moved over into that. But the Avengers are like kind of Earth's last line of defense in the Marvel universe. Like they're the line in the sand, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely. Very important, and it shows that importance.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Kind of like how it's kind of like the founding of the Avengers is as important as like the coming of Galactus.
Yes, absolutely. What's your favorite part in the book?
I liked the different Iron Man suits.
Yeah.
I thought that was pretty neat. That
They all
seems
have
like
different
that's like very Tony thing to do. Is like,
Yeah.
let's have a team of Iron Men.
I love how he's got no time to do this, right? Like
He's just
Namor and
pulling-
Submariner have called out the
and
Avengers.
Another part I really liked was the whole, Namor and Submariner, they're talking to each other, and then it shows the thought bubbles like, this pitiful fool.
Yeah, right.
Once we're done, I'm going to destroy him.
They feel so classic, and they are from the 70s, but they do still lean into that Stan Lee goofball style of writing from the 60s. Stan Lee, Lieber, and others, of course. So I love that moment because Tony, it's like dire situation, not much time. He manages still to paint and color coordinate the armored Avenger suits. I
wonder if they were collapsible.
I like that. And like I said, those armored Avengers, they kind of take that idea into comic books like Earth X and other things like that. This is another book that helped launch the career of Jim Shooter, another step in that ladder. Doing work like this, doing these one-shots like What Ifs and stuff like that, helped eventually, within 10, 12 years, he's the editor-in-chief of Marvel, the most powerful man in comic books, pretty much, right? And of course, it cemented the legacy of Gil Kane. The fact that Gil Kane, so far into his career, and he continued to make comic books into the 90s, homie. He did a New Warriors annual, for instance, right? So, Gil Kane's career, his legacy, cemented by books just like this one, What If, and it really carried on and started the legacy of the fact that the What Ifs were going to be really dark. So we had the first one, Spider-Man joins the Fantastic Four, Reed and Sue split up, but it's actually kind of okay for most other people.
Like at least Namor is not going to attack Earth anymore.
In the last one, Hulk, what if he had Banner's brain? It gets weird, it gets wild with X-Men and all that stuff. It gets tragic for Ben Grimm and Alicia Masters. Yeah. But some of the other people don't get such a bad rap. Banner actually gets to live a life of happiness there for a while. This one is dark. Like, Tony Stark's life is completely screwed if the Avengers had never formed, right?
Yeah.
And it cements that idea, because I remember this growing up, reading What Ifs. Heroes would die all the time. And I would just be like this 10, 11-year-old kid being like, but just, and fascinated
how could
with
that happen?
Fascinated with the death of the Marvel Universe and their characters. Overall, would you recommend this one, What If?
Yeah.
What Ifs are just fun in general, are they not?
I think like anybody can really enjoy a What If.
Yeah, What If Classic Volume 1 is out right now. We'll throw a link down below in case you want to check it out. This one has the first 12 issues of What If. They're all fun. They're all nice lessons in Marvel history and Marvel alternate history. Like I said, this is Earth 776.
They are that, but they're not bogged down by the continuity as much.
Exactly. And look, the cover is actually the cover of What If number 3. How cool. How cool. So we'll be doing another What If coming up here in Comics Revisited Season 2, but be sure to join us next week where me and Jelani are going to be talking about Crisis on Infinite Earths. The
DC
ultimate...
thing?
Yeah, it's a big DC thing. That's the one in 1986 where they took all the multiverse and crushed it down into one. You remember that? And that launched the DC universe that we knew and loved. With the death of Superman and all that stuff, and kind of the DC universe that still exists today in some form or another. But that's next week here on Comics Revisited, Crisis on Infinite Earths. Me and Jelani very excited to be talking about that one. Thank you so much for checking out this video. Let us know your recollections and thought on What Ifs in general, and of course What If number 3, what if the Avengers had never been? And maybe give us an alternate What If. There's plenty of different moments where, the Avengers could never have formed. What if they never formed at all? Like with the Loki thing, you know? Like what would happen there? Who knows? Let us know what you think happens on What Ifs. Right?
Yeah.
Why not? Why not? Please do like, share, and subscribe. Join us over at the PCP Army on Facebook, over at Patreon at patreon.com/PCP, and at popculturephilosophers.com for podcasts and a whole lot more. I've been Rockin' Robbie Billups. This has been
Brooks the Magnificent.
We are Pop Culture Philosophers. Thanks for joining the Army. Thanks for rocking with us. Kramer.